All right. So thanks for all for coming. And we're doing our last session today, and then we'll be off for the holidays. So today we're going to have a discussion about ethics. Um, the this group here in at York. Oops, sorry, we got confused. So let's start all over again. Where's my PowerPoint slide? There's a group at York that does professional learning, and they had a series of questions last year that I was on a panel for. And so these are what we're going to do now is answer the questions that they had, and then we'll have a discussion. Anybody have any thoughts? So the point is that the future is definitely coming, and or if it's not here already, and we want to know, ask, is it going to be, the world going to be better or worse place because of it? And my first reaction when I hear some new machine learning thing is completely dominated by how cool it is. And but we should also think about whether it's good for the world or not. So this here was the first question. What are the positive things that may help the average person? Oh, I've had on test questions, what will help the average person in machine learning? And one of the answers was, well, we'll all get jobs. And most of my students failed to notice that, no, actually, some people will get jobs. Maybe the people in my computer science class will get jobs, but the average person will not. All right, so here, so you may know that Go, machine learning beat Go, and then it did great at as a debater, and then it won at this real time computer programming video game thing, which people said was a big deal. Robotics, self-driving cars, image processing, speech processing. Medical experts are now better at finding out whether you have a tumor than real people. Legal experts, financial experts. This one was a big deal last year. Evidently, if you know the linking of a big molecule, this program will tell you how it folds, and that is supposed to have been a really hard problem that was a huge breakthrough. These programs are definitely going to help manage our lives, help with entertainment, create new art, and this was in the news just last week. I thought was pretty cool. Actually, my father sent it to me. So if you take a person who's in a coma, and as far as you know, they're not thinking, and can you communicate with them? So what you do is you say to them, hey, think about playing tennis, or think about your mother. You ask them something to think about, and then you do an MRI scan of their brain, and now we have all this data, and like any data, you get the machine learning to learn from the it looks at the X data, it looks at the scans, and can it learn the Y? And evidently it can. So that means that by looking at the MRI scan of a person in a coma, it can kind of predict what the person is thinking. Right, so that's cool. Here they put these little pins in a person's brain, and with machine learning, they can the person can type. So that's certainly cool. Cool factors, right? So Uber and Google, they started these self-driving cars, and then they kind of stopped because snow was a problem, human values was a problem, confidence was a problem. But I was excited that Toronto is getting a shuffle a shuttle, a self-driving shuttle this year. All right, so now I'm just whipping off these things, and then people are going to have to talk themselves. What do they think? What are the negative impacts of machine learning? Well, they've been saying for the last 10 to 15 years that in 10 or 15 years, half the current jobs will be obsolete. So, you know, are we behind that, or is that happening? Are people losing their jobs? And then, you know, when the lawyers lose their jobs, what will they do? Right. So I guess what I'm hoping for is that we have a benevolent dictator, you know, whoever is in power with these machines is going to be in power, who's going to be very powerful, and hopefully they're benevolent to the poor. Right. So how else we get scary? Well, if the machine learning customizes targeting exactly you, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I personally like it when they try to sell me things that I might want, as opposed to what I don't want. They are certainly going to be watching you more. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Cybersecurity, if somebody hacks into the self-driving cars, will that be particularly bad? The judges, the machine learning right now is helping decide who to let out of jail and who not to let out of jail, and is that good or is that bad? Is it fair? How do you determine what the machine learning is doing? How do you determine whether it's being fair? The Chinese in particular are really good at picking out faces out of a crowd. And is that good or bad? Right? Maybe you're criminal. It's good maybe to catch all the criminals, but maybe your criminals are activists. And then they certainly are building machines that can automatically kill other people, decide, hey, should I kill or not kill? And, you know, maybe that's cool. And what's the problem with killing machines? Other than the fact that they kill people, is that everybody's going to want one of these machines, right? So maybe if only you had them, it would be fine, but the people you don't like are going to have one too. All right, so is AI going to replace humans anytime soon? So this is kind of how we learned before. It certainly is learning how to recognize faces in bicycles. But what is it not particularly good at yet? It's not particularly good at understanding complex concepts. It's not good at emotions and empathy. It's not, yeah. Well, what is consciousness? Is it conscious? And so computers are now better at labeling cancers and tumors than humans are. But you've seen this slide before. What they're not good at is when there's not somebody labeling stuff, right? If you would think if an alien walked around on Earth, they would figure out that this object drives around and stops here. But the machine learning isn't quite good at figuring out new environments by itself. I watched this IBM debater back in 2018, and it was really good at getting a question and giving a speech on it. But what it wasn't good at is it didn't listen to the other guy's arguments and understand what it was saying and giving a good response. Oh, another thing so what's true now about learning a game? If you tell the machine learning thing the rules of a game and it trains and trains and trains, it can beat humans at any game. But if you tweak the rules slightly, then you have to completely retrain it, right? It's not good at learning, taking the experience it has from one game and translating it to another game. And this is this game here, I've been told, is something it's not good at, where you have to learn subtle cooperative things between different players, have to figure out how to communicate when they don't know each other. So on the other hand, computers are getting better and better. They're starting to, machines are starting to design machines, which will design machines. I thought about giving you a few slides on differential equations. So you know, if you have the differential equation that the rate of growth is proportional to what you currently have, then you have exponential growth. But if you have the rate of growth be slightly faster than that, then you get what is known as the singularity. And the key about singularities is, right, an exponential growth grows fast, but you still have to go to exponential time to get exponential amount of technology. And this way of predicting says that at 12 o'clock on, I don't know which day, the technology will go to infinity. And then you, of course, you have to ask, what will life look like after that singularity? So back to the question of AI being a judge. So, so an AI program is only as good as the data that it learns from, right? So, and our data is biased, and we don't understand the data so well. We don't understand what the machine comes out from this data, right? We don't understand a neural net any better than we understand our own brains. We don't, when an artificial AI judge makes a decision, we don't know why it's making that decision. But on the other hand, when a human makes a decision, we don't understand that any better. So which of these machines do you trust better? Do you trust an artificial machine better, or a human judge better? We probably have all heard when Google first came out to recognize faces, it didn't know how to recognize Black faces because that's not the data it was given. So how do you keep your AI machine from discriminating against poor or against Blacks, right? You can say, hey, don't consider the person's race, but if you consider what neighborhood they live in, or you consider what kind of job they have, the income they have, if you focus on data that comes out of their police records, or data that comes out of whether children's AIDS has come and looked at them or not, then all this data will systematically target poor Black people, right? So how do you get the data so so that it's fair? And the truth is, I don't even know what fair means, right? I've gone to a couple conferences and even written a paper on, well, you have this data, now what is fair? It's just, there's not even a good definition, right? So now, as far as deciding who to kill, we certainly want to minimize the number of US soldiers that get killed, which here I'm just saying there's some truth to that and some sarcasm to that, because we want to minimize the number of people around the world that are killed. How do you determine who the enemy is, right? Do you want the US, or do you want China, or do you want anybody selling their technology to whom, right? Who do we want to have this technology, right? So I guess the question is, who do you trust, and how do you keep all this huge power in the hands of the people that you trust versus you don't trust, right? And then these various ethical questions have been around for a long time. One, I don't know if I have this in a slide now, but oh yeah, here it is. So at one point, Google was driving around a car and a woman jumped in front of the car, and the car did not, everybody agreed, right? There are cameras everywhere. So everybody knows what the situation was, right? And everybody agreed that there was no way that that car could have stopped in time to not hit that woman. But what concerned people is that the car didn't even try to stop. Now, you might ask, if the car knew it didn't have time to stop, right? Was it risking the people in the car in order to not slam on its brakes? But anyway, it got public media going, and they stopped the program. I don't know what programs are running now. All right, so here's another. I'm whipping through these slides in a kind of a manic way, but we can go over them again. Social media. How do you feel about social media? It's kind of run by machine learning algorithms too, right? Facebook and stuff decides which news articles, which things, which posts from your friends to be put up. And certainly everybody was thinking that when the internet came, when the social media programs came, that they would be great because everybody would be smarter, everybody would be empowered by their own personal little community, right? If you're name any weird little group, if you were a trans person, suddenly you're linked with the trans people from around the world, and that's fantastic, right? And so this community can have access to all the community's knowledge, and that's great. But I guess you all know the negative impacts are that the world has never been so divided, right? The left wing go more and more left, the right wing go more and more right, the Christians go more Christians, the Muslims go more Muslim, and fake news is just at an all-time high. There's all these studies which say, right, people are just far more likely to believe fake news than real news, and it's just a problem. All right. So let's talk about jobs, losing your jobs, right? So in the past, when the people making carriages and candles lost their jobs because of the new technology, it wasn't a problem because there were new jobs to replace those jobs, right? But the feeling is we won't be as lucky this time. When people lose their jobs to the new technology, except for a handful of people working for Google, there just won't be more jobs, right? I was sort of surprised by this. This data, I just found this on the internet. It claims that only 5% of today's jobs can be completely replaced by a computer. And I was surprised how small that was. But they countered it by saying, though only 5% of the jobs can be completely replaced, every job can be replaced by a certain amount, right? So if you look at what the CEO of a big corporation does, it said 25 to 33% of what she does can now be automated, right? So she says that's great because that leaves me more time to do valuable things, right? She can spend her time doing human empathy things. She can spend her time doing creative things as opposed to all these little tasks that need to be done by something else. And let me say that I do think if you're a young person thinking about what job to go into, anything requiring sort of human skills, creativity, art, are still going to be jobs. All right, so here's just some study. CEO, we said that. If you're a financial trader, man, you better 70% of their work is going to be gone, 30% of legal work, 22% of medical work. This is the one that everybody should get worried about. 27% of work done by educators is going to be replaced by computers. So that's clearly where we need to get concerned. So this is, I've said this already. Suppose we had a world in which the computers did all our jobs for us, and we were given some minimum income, which was just enough. It was enough to meet our daily needs. Would we then be happy, right? Or would people be upset because even if they hate their job, they still find meaning in having a job, right? So if they suddenly don't have a job, will they people lack meaning? They will have to find meaning some other way. They will have to learn to play guitar and find meaning in that. I like to joke to say, well, you hire half the people in the world to entertain the other half of the people in the world, and then we will be fine, right? So how is this software produced? Well, we've kind of talked about it in all the other talks, but certainly this idea that C.S. Lewis said that everything looks like magic until you understand it, right? You get some new technology, it feels like magic. And one thing about being an educator that I think is important is I think everybody driving a car should have some knowledge of the four-stroke engine and should have some knowledge of how their fridge works, right? The compression and the decompressing of gas. Why does an airplane lift? How does your computer, how does the silicon make your computer work? I think everybody should have some basic understanding of that. I have a talk I put together in Africa, which starts from sand and works through up to see how a computer is built. I think that's a fun talk. So we've already said that this is all done by not human coding, but by gradient descent, learning from lots of data. And I've already said that it strikes me as it's sort of like evolution. And so there's something awfully spiritual about it. In both evolution and in machine learning, if you have random changes and you give positive feedback to improve things, then what emerges is some complexity that is awe-inspiring. And as I've said, you don't understand the brain and we don't understand the neural network. So I've said already, humans can walk, but have a hard time explaining how to walk. But there's, if you videotape people walking, there's enough pattern in that the computer can learn to walk. So this was one of their questions, and we had a whole lecture on that. Remember, it says if you assume that the universe has some probability distribution on images, say, and you collect a lot of training data randomly from that distribution, and you find a machine that gives the right answer on the training data without memorizing the answers, then with high probability, it will be able to look at data drawn from the same distribution. And now what about ethics and leadership, right? Oh, here we said the world is changing, right? So this is kind of saying the questions that are arising about ethics aren't new, but they certainly are going to be bigger start questions when as the technology progresses, right? And hopefully we will have some good public discussions on how we feel about ethics. So I guess this is my bottom line, is that machine learning is coming. If it's not here already, it will change the world. The rich, whoever controls the AI, will be very rich and very powerful. and all we can hope is that they will be benevolent, right? I mean, that's the bottom line, is who will be controlling this power, and will they be good to us, right? Will the masses be poverty, or will the masses be happier? I mean, that's just, right, that's up to whoever's making the decisions. And right, and who do we want to be making decisions about our morality, right? That's the question. Who do you in this list? I mean, here we all have answers to this question: who's benevolent and who's evil, right? And so when humans landed on when I was being born, right, they were landing on the moon, and that was all exciting, but this is going to be way, way bigger. What's happening here is way bigger than landing on the moon, right? I saw this article the other day saying that we need a Bill of Rights to understand AI-powered world. I know I'm naive, but I love California and the hippies that live there, and I'm hoping that they're writing our machine learning algorithms, and that they will be good to us. So this is what this picture here demonstrates my only hope for the future, right? And that's what I have to say about machine learning and ethics. So that was very fast. I guess I could have talked slower. Anybody have any thoughts on all of those points?
Hello, Jeff.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. I have a lot of thoughts, but before that, I was surprised you had one slide about technology appearing as magic, but
right.
You attributed that to C.S. Lewis, even though your slide said Arthur Clarke.
Oh,
yes.
There you go. There you go.
I was paying attention. I was paying attention to everything
you were
said.
paying attention. I will fix that.
Oh, no, the slide is okay. Verbally, you said something else.
Oh, verbal, I said it wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Now, excuse me, let me mute this thing here. So, you correctly point out that these ethical, moral questions, they've been around with us since the day we learned how to use a rock as a tool.
Right.
So it is true that we let technology get ahead of ourselves and not focus on the moral questions. And that's a problem with society. Society does not give enough time or reflection or weight to solving moral ethical problems before the technology goes out of hand. It's almost like every 1,000 years, 100 years, now maybe 10 years, a new technology will be there and it becomes a monster, and then we try to grapple with it.
Right.
So, that's the answer I give to many people who try to engage me on that. And I say, let me give you one example. There's a knife, right? And he started off by saying guns should be banned. I said, that won't solve the problem. Take a knife, for example. There are knives everywhere. You got a kitchen, right? There's knives there. So when somebody murders someone with a knife, let me finish.
Kill 100 people in 1 minute with a knife.
Yeah. My point is, so it's the knife is not the problem. It's the guy who's holding the knife the problem. So it's society first that has to reform itself and not blame technology. You can't ban knives. That won't solve the problem.
If everybody had one of those old guns from the Civil War in which you have to put in the gunpowder, then we wouldn't be having so many massacres. It is the machine gun that's the problem.
Yeah. Whether it's a knife, gun, or rock, the problem is that we need to have ethics built in from early childhood if we have any hope of tackling these problems.
Mm-hmm. Right. And who's going to teach it? Who's going to teach your ethics? There are so many different ethics.
Well, we've got to start somewhere.
Right.
But all of those points you raised are quite valid. Do you mind if I contribute another useful pointer?
No, go.
Yes. So on the BBC, there is a annual feature called the Wreath Lectures.
Right.
Okay. And then I think the latest one, they featured Stuart Russell, who titled his lecture, something like, "Is this a defining moment for humanity?" And he
Right.
dwelt exactly on what you spoke about.
Mhm.
And he mentioned, the UN conference on, they're trying to come up with a treaty on killer robots and a couple other things. And that's worth listening to. So I would encourage you to check it out. Let me know, I'll send you the link.
Excellent.
But I think it would help add a little dimension to what you said and
For
to
sure.
any listeners as well.
For sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me speak here.
Mm-hmm.
Just to throw in a couple comments here. Was that Sharan that was speaking? I appreciate those comments.
Yeah, this is Sharon Kalwani. I'm coming to you all the way from Michigan.
Oh,
door.
Okay, and I'm Martin, is my name. I am just thinking that when you talk about teaching ethics, that's very hopeful and positive. I'm not sure I have quite as much faith in people, and that includes myself, either in an ability to hold to ethics or to be infallible in those sorts of decisions. And I mean, certainly that's an important place to start, and an important place for us to continue to work on. But I think it's also important for us to look at the tools in what that enables us to do in order to try and mitigate against the potential for us to make the wrong choices. I mean, you think about a government, and I mean, to use the example of the United States government, because you're from Michigan, there's a real balance of powers in between the sides of the Congress and the executive government, and as a way of trying to balance out when people make mistakes. And I think that's the same with technology as well. We want to be careful about what tools we give ourselves in order to mitigate how much damage we can do and how fast we can do it.
Right.
For example, and that sort of points to the distinction between a knife and a machine gun or a nuclear bomb. They're all part of a continuum there. Should we give everybody a nuclear bomb? Well, if we chose not to, well, they're going to go get machine guns, and if we don't give them machine guns, they're going to get knives. Well, my point is that it's better for people to have knives than nuclear bombs. And so that makes it kind of complex in what tools are just too dangerous for us to have at our disposal, and what mechanisms do we want to put in place to try and mitigate them. And that's why I think it's so important that it's not just something that we sort of hand over to society at large and say, okay, this tool can be used for good or bad, so it's ambivalent. It's not the problem with the tool. Society, we need to teach ethics to, and society has to make the decisions. But when the decisions involve so much knowledge require so much knowledge of the technology, that I think it's really important for the people developing the tools to engage into conversations exactly like this, to think about how we build the tools and in a way that's safer, and how do we use them in a way that's safer. So that's just one comment, and I probably took too long explaining that. But I also want to add some of the things I really like about AI. One is as my eyesight gets worse and worse, which I have nothing to complain about. I haven't had to wear glasses all my life, and I'm just whining because now I do have to read them or wear them for reading. I really like the text to speech or the speech to text on the phone. I just find that something that I use all the time and I love. And another place that I really like AI is what it teaches us about ourselves. Just as we try and understand the brain, understand the way that neural networks inside of our body. Having models, being able to model that with computers, and is really reveals lots of stuff about ourselves, and we can learn about ourselves. So those are some examples of the positive and negative there. I hand it over to the next person.
Thanks, Martin. That was great. I knew we would get some good insights from you. Martin always is the most fair, seeing all the sides of things of anybody I know. And he's my brother, if you didn't catch that.
Thanks, that's kind of you to say.
What about you, Jake? Are you hopeful for the future?
Well, I'm hopeful. I would like to be hopeful. I want to be hopeful. I did think about responsibility, or in terms of government, maybe doing something harmful or bad and then blaming it on the machine, sort of like the dog ate my homework. Well, the machine made a decision, and it's like, well, it caused a disaster, but it's not our responsibility because it was the machine that did it. That's the kind of thing that sort of scares me. I think that it's easy to put the blame on the machine and shirk responsibility. I think that can happen, particularly with big institutions like the government. And then again, who would right that wrong? That's a big question, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I remember the leak of WikiLeaks, all of the information that was revealed. I remember when that shocking information came out on the news, and I saw those things that happened in Iraq, for instance, the terrible things that happened. It was human decisions, but also some of them were technological. I think the idea of using, that's the other thing too, is like looking at real life as a game. So it's like wars are basically computer games. So the idea that people are killed or hurt, it's just dismissed. It's easy to dismiss it. I don't know. Those are the kinds of thoughts that the negative thoughts that come to mind. I don't know. To me, it's a little bit scary, because the question is like, who is in charge? That's the big question. You know, that's like what you were mentioning earlier. So you can have a person who is in charge, and they could become crazy, right? And then what happens? What happens then? So it's a bit. It can be alarming. That's the way I see these problems. The idea, though, that machines can detect medical problems better than humans. That's very encouraging, and I like that idea that you talked about earlier. I've heard of this, about being able to communicate with a person in a coma, trying to find out whether they're actually thinking, whether they're able to communicate. That's fascinating, and that could be a very good thing.
Thanks, Jake. Hey, Mike, we see your face an awful lot. How are you doing? Terry, Peter, and Sylvia.
Are they there?
Norman,
Oh, yeah, Norman's here.
Marianne.
Jake?
Hey,
Yep.
Terry.
Yeah, this is Sharon here. You mentioned something where you, I think, referred to that WikiLeaks and later talked about, treating life as a game.
Yeah.
Where, again, it's not the technology that's the problem, but, the person at the other end of the technology. And, this question has been explored before. I'd like to remind folks, maybe some of you are not old enough, but there was a Star Trek original series episode in which Kirk ends up in a planet where they fight a war with each other, but it's virtual. So there's a virtual missile and they decide, oh, this area got hit. All those people in the area report to some place and we're going to kill you all there. And they claim, oh, that was painless, clean. And then Kirk sabotages the machine. So now they'll actually have to fight a real war. And that prospect causes them to stop this virtual war. So, this, thing, treating it as a game comes from when people who are making decisions are insulated or remote from the reality of the situation. Then to them, it's just a statistic.
Yeah.
So we should never lose touch with reality. And that it should be just one facet of being able to deal with it. It's going to be incredibly complex. There is no single answer, but a multitude of inputs and answers that we have to always constantly keep in front of us. One other thing I heard in Jeff's talk, numerous times he used the word hope. And if we want to avoid future disaster because technology getting out of hand and humanity ending up getting destroyed by it or severely disabled by it, then we should tackle the problem and not rely on hope here.
So then how do you tackle the problem? The problem is like, I think the problem is a lot like, look at it, like a clear picture of it is the machines of American politics, how it's like this extreme propaganda, these lies that are polarized,
Yes.
these extremes. How do you control that? I mean,
Well,
that's a big problem.
Well, one of the attributes that that problem exists is, and a lot of folks here, at least in my neck of the woods, tend to also point to the same thing: is that there's a complete lack of critical thinking. It's almost void, or we've robbed people of the ability to do that, and that would be another, arrow in the quiver to helping address the problem. Early on, we should have people exposed to, ethics, morals, and also critical thinking. They would at least give us a few more tools to deal with it. And it should be early on as part of the education. You can't expect oh, let's come up with a simple rule to deal with this. It has to spring forth from early in our development, from childhood, and it'll take maybe a few generations uh, uh, so that society at large, the general larger population, may be better equipped to tackle it.
You raise a couple of points that make me think about education and the fact that, for instance, today we have all information at our fingertips. We want to just ask a question, just Google it. You can well, and hopefully Google is like telling the truth, or the Wikipedia is telling the truth.
Yeah, carry on.
We also have books, but I don't know very many people who look at books anymore. I mean, there are libraries full of books, there's printed matter, there's a lot of material, but who actually opens books anymore? I don't see people reading books very often.
Yeah, Jake, I think what we're confusing here is the medium of delivery of that knowledge. It can be Google, it can be books, it can be oral, as it was, before the Gutenberg oral, tradition handed down. But in all of those, whether it's online books or even, some visual media, implanting it in your brain with a chip, ultimately it is we who have to digest that and give it thought. That's why I mentioned critical thinking. So, if you are equipped with critical thinking and you are suddenly picked up and put in another planet where maybe it's in a different state of evolution, you could still use critical thinking to figure out what that society is, what the rules are, what seems to be right or wrong, and that would be a litmus test, for that education. So the method of delivery doesn't matter. What matters is how you digest and act on that. So just lamenting that nobody opens books anymore, so education is falling, that's not the problem. The problem is not being able to use whatever knowledge or education being given.
Or be motivated to do so.
And then, control of that knowledge too. The first rule of war is to control the information, and then everything else flies out of the window. I think the exact quote is, the first casualty of war is truth, and by that extent, control information. So that's the important part. The folks who, dreamt of the internet, our hippies in Berkeley and West Coast and other places, were benevolent, and they thought, democratize information, let it be freely available. They were thinking that everyone else is like them, that they would welcome it, absorb it, and benefit from it. What they didn't realize is, they didn't give thought to how this technology could be regulated or could be managed. And they were a little far ahead of their time, but they forgot that in history, we've always come up with technology and have had to learn the hard way. So I think it might repeat itself, that maybe 10, 20 years later, Jeff and I will probably see a terrible use of the technology, and then society will decide, well, we better fix it, but we'll pay the price. And that's happened throughout history. Tell me when it hasn't yet.
I really like the comments around critical thinking and just because that's so important in trying to work our way through this as people connected with technology and as society. I am.
Sorry, folks. I just noticed the clock. I have to leave, but it's been an interesting discussion. And whoever organized this, would you maybe do a repeat? I don't know, 3 or 6 months later? I'd be happy to join again.
Excellent. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
chat with you.
Just thinking back when I was in high school, there was lots of talk of everybody losing their jobs, but we'd replace, everybody would go to a shorter work week and life would be perfect. And of course that didn't happen. I mean, we have people now that are working much more and people that are working not at all is what happened rather than everybody working shorter work weeks. But and I think that's one dynamic here is not just that we have difficulty in making the right decisions or assessing what's the right decisions. We I think we sometimes even have trouble thinking about what we want. Like Jeff, you gave the example about people not liking their jobs, and so technology could replace those jobs. But one thing I think a lot of people like is they like not liking their job. And if they no longer had that ability to not like their job, they would be really missing something, and they would be choosing to not like something else, you know, because there is that need there. And so I think the thing to address is not getting rid of the things we don't like, but really looking inward and thinking about, well, what ways do we really value those things, you know, if they were missing. You know, it's the whole, when you retire, you know, great, we're going to be able to sit on the beach for the next 40 years. But you get tired of that pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when I think about games and AI solving games, you can think of a game kind of as a puzzle that you solve, which is really cool. Okay, you've gone and you've solved the puzzle with AI, you've solved that game. But one thing is the fun of the puzzle is figuring it out, right? You don't want something else to figure it out for you. And then also there's the fun of playing the game, you know, and so you don't want the thing figured out. You just enjoy the act of it. And life is kind of like that too, that what's best is not always what's best, you know. There's something to be said for us muddling our way through medical decisions. You know, you hate to have, or driving decisions, or all the other decisions that we as humans make. Don't really want them all made for us. I'd just as soon live it out and make some mistakes.
I didn't want any medical mistakes. No thanks.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point about, you know, some mistakes. It's better having the right decision made, but you know, the right medical decision, is for us to go out and get exercise each day and eat healthy, and all those are the more important medical decisions, and we don't do very well at those. And we could write an AI app to help us do those things. That would be great. No, I definitely hear your point, Jake. But there's some decisions that okay, let's use whatever tools are at our disposal to make them as good as possible.
I came on this. The reason why I really joined in here is I was looking at it from a risk. I'm into risk management and how you could you look at the likelihood and you look at the severity, and you determine you know what's the risk, what's the level of risk. So I'm trying to see, you know, how can I use AI to help me to manage risk better, so you don't spend all this time looking at every element and trying to determine, you know, the risk, okay, because it's tedious. You have to look at everyone. If you can have an algorithm that could just look at the severity, Another thing, you'll even have to get the input. How do you get it automatically? Do you use cameras, or you use voice, or how you automate all this thing, and so that you can take away, you don't have that manual labor that you use. And as I say, it's garbage in, garbage out. If I put in garbage in to determine a risk, that I may say it's the 4, which is the severity of a catastrophe, would be catastrophic, but yet it might be negligible to somebody else. So how you use AI, and I hear what Jeff, quite interesting. When you brought up that slide with the benevolent or the evil, and you had some on the benevolent side and you have some on the evil side, I was wondering if you if it was intended to be that way, or anyhow. But yeah, AI can be used. It's kind of scary. I was listening to actually a sermon just this Sunday, and the priest said, we are in a crisis, the world is in a crisis, individuals in a crisis, and where we go from here. He said, we used to think about kindness, but now we replace kindness to aggressiveness, So if AI gets in the wrong hands, okay, what's going to happen to this world? It's scary, honestly, So, some going to use it for good and some going to be using it for evil. And who is going to win? And who is in control?
Jerry, it's interesting because you started talking about risk management. This is a big risk, what you're talking about now. I mean, who is in control? But it's a different thing, but it's kind of curious how it ties together.
No, well, it's a general discussion. Everything is risk. I mean, it's a risk, it's a risk to have AI, okay? I mean, because some could use for evil and some could use it for good, I was just talking in general terms. That what I said at first is I came on here just learn more about how I can, like in electrical, like I'm an electrical engineer, and to start off with, we're looking at risk in electrical engineering, and then this evolved to more than electrical engineering, okay? We even look at climate now, okay? And so we look at risk in general. The whole world is risky, okay? So you cannot, like the other day we had a discussion about long-term care, okay? The risk of the residents there, okay? How you could manage that risk so that they can live in dignity, all right? So risk is a big thing, everything you think of, just think of can you think of anything that doesn't have risk to it? I don't think so. Everything you think of has a risk element to it. So yeah, start with risk, and I end up, it was that photograph that slide was still in my mind, so I had to talk about it, the one about benevolent and evil. So sorry if I confuse you by ending up talking about that slide, okay?
No, it's not confusing, no. Just that, going back to the beginning when you were talking about risk, I was wondering what you were talking about. You say you're involved in you work in electrical engineering, but I was wondering, are you talking about like the stock market, or like what were you actually looking for, and what kind of data would you put in there to make predictions? I mean, or even like in the States, Donald Trump says, it's impossible that I lost the election. I know from the information I had, I should have won. So these kind of questions, they're like, it's all, sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it certainly doesn't. Depends on whether the person speaking is sane or not.
Yeah, I see. You have a good point. You're trying to make a connection with what I started off saying and where I ended up, and that makes some people talk. They focus on that. But what? Okay, yeah. but in terms of going back to what I started to say, where I was looking at this risk, for example, I do a survey, okay? Let us say I do a survey of a circuit breaker. There are things that can go wrong with that breaker, all right?
Right.
For example, the coil could fail, or not only with the breaker itself, okay, but maybe the environment. It might be in a dusty environment, all right? So manually, I can go out there and look at that equipment. Let's say equipment, it could be a breaker, it could be a transformer, it could be a motor generator, okay? But I'm looking at that equipment manually, I would say, okay, it's in an environment that it could cause the failure because it could be dusty, it could be wet, okay, it could be damp, okay? So I can, as a human being, I can say, well, what's the risk of this going to have a failure, all right? It could be maybe there are intermittent problems electrically is going on, all right? Or it might be smoking because it's overloaded, all right? The motor might be overloaded. So as a human being, I can do that, okay? How do I take all that data, that information now, and get a machine to make that decision? And that is quite challenging because you have to have the right data. And so you really have to, you really have to interrelate the man, the machine, the media, which is the environment, and management's decision in terms of making a decision to say, well, this thing going to fail because they did not maintain it. That's another element we have to think of. It's not only the physical failure, but because the lack of maintenance, for example, or a poor design could cause a problem. So how you take all this data that me as an individual, a human being can look at it there and make a decision, hey, this is a level 4, it could be catastrophic, or it is level 1, it is negligible. How you get the machine now to do what I can do physically, quickly, okay? Because I have lots of others to, I may have about 1,000 pieces of equipment, okay? Which would take time, but if you could have algorithms in there that could make the decision for you, then it would be quicker. You're not spending that time trying to evaluate the risk on it. It's complicated, I know, it's not easy, okay? It's quite complicated, but I think it can be done, but maybe on a small scale, and then maybe eventually the machine going to learn, and eventually maybe it comes to a point where it can do that. But I don't think it can do that right now. It's it's what you're going to get out of it for the decision, Like we were talking the other day about having cameras, like, in terms of when you're looking at transmission lines, not only you look at how much data gathering, you have to look at the configuration, all right? You look at not only the condition, but the configuration is important too, because it might be working properly, but it might be bad in an area where the risk is high, you see? So how you put all that together? Anyway, I wasn't going to talk, but I ended up saying something. All right.
That was great. Thanks so much, Sarah. You have a lot of good things to say.
Yeah, man. But good, very good session, Jeff. I was on the last session and I enjoyed it. I thought, let me come back again.
Excellent. Well, all 7 of them will have videos. You can go back and watch any of them.
Okay, sure. I like all the animation and everything like that. So Jake, I hope I answered your question. I cleared up a few of, it's not too confusing, all right?
Yes, you did. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I just have one more comment. So if Terry, if you already registered through VTools, then your email must be there already. So I can send you the links to the previous sessions on YouTube as well. You have registered through VTools, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Then I have your email. I'll forward the links to you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing all that hard work with this group. I really appreciate being invited to this. And I enjoyed it. So
Me too. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, guys.
Okay,
Okay.
guys, bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks
you too.
a lot.